MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Hey, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. No, I'm not Albert Einstein, but Einstein won't save lives. My guest is going to save. She's rejoining with me, Susan Davis. But I tell you something, what she's going to talk about. It's a cardiac diseases, cardiac problems, cardiac responses for the cardiac response teams. She's going to talk about that. I tell you, I just did some research on it. It's just stunning to me. 18 million people die in the world, just the research, every year through the cardiac arrest. 18 million people die every year. 10% of chances go down every minute. Every minute, 10% of chances go down in the cardiac arrest if you don't save them life, if you don't get a rapid response. 30% of the deaths in India, for example, are due to 3 out of 10 are due to the cardiac arrest in India. So I tell you, the country by country, the cardiac problems are. Russia is number one. Vodka and steaks, that's all they eat. I have a lot of European friends, Eastern European friends, drink vodka and then steak. That's all. They don't even understand the vegetables, the meaning of vegetable. And China is surprisingly next one in China. China has the second highest cardiac disease. That is surprised me because they don't look, that we can ask Susan about it, they're our guest. But China, they don't look fat, but they have they have all the risk factors for the cardiac disease. Then third one is India. And then fourth one is, these are usual suspects, and then Brazil. And these are the countries, and the United States is right after Brazil, actually, or right before Brazil is the United States. So Russia, China, India, United States, Brazil are the top 5 countries people die. Most of the people die because of the cardiac problem. United States is understandable. They eat the steak and mashed potato country. But India, a lot of people eat vegetables, but they have lifestyles as a problem, and they eat a lot of sugar. And then if you go to other countries, Russia is a vodka and steak. And these are the countries' usual suspects. We have to, so actually, when you have a cardiac episode, particularly cardiac arrest, resuscitation has to be done within 12. Actually, ambulance is supposed to arrive in 12 minutes. That is, in the United States, the law is before the 12 minutes. But if you don't get it because it's due to snow or anything else, people die. In other countries, forget about ambulance. Maybe it's coming up next day, mañana, tomorrow. So these kind of problems exist. So let us talk with our guest, Susan Davis. She's a doctorate in nursing, and she is one of the preeminent scholars in this area of cardiac arrest. Let me bring her to the table. Welcome, Susan Davis. Susan.
Good evening, Ramana. Thank you for having me.
So tell us, I've just been talking about the countries, and the cardiac arrest is one of the biggest cause of death is the cardiac arrest in the world. Not the cancer, nothing else. In India, for example, 3 out of 10 people die because of the cardiac arrest. You could have saved with the rapid response. So tell us, can you take as a case in the United States, somebody has a cardiac arrest, the starting from symptoms to all the way to the emergency room, and then what happens in the emergency room? Can you run down the steps during the process?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same for everybody, Ramana, but for sure, there are signs and symptoms that lead up to someone having a cardiac arrest. I kind of like your description in Russia. It's vodka and steak. So, perhaps 24, 48 hours before the event, there was too much vodka or steak going on. But in all seriousness, the body always shows signs and symptoms of trouble long before the trouble hits. And so for cardiac arrest, it literally could be 2 or 3 days earlier. 24 hours for sure. Signs and symptoms could be achy. It could be unusual anxiety. It could be heartburn. It could be the awkwardness. We all talk, we've heard about the pain in one arm or down the shoulder or across both shoulders. So there's generally all kinds. I usually tell people it's like being around a horse, right? Horses don't just kick. There's many signs that a horse will give you that you're about to get kicked. They flick their ears, they shift their weight, they swish their tail before you get kicked. And a cardiac arrest is just the same. So it is watching for the signs and symptoms. That's 24, 48, 8 hours before you're likely to see some increasing symptoms. People tend to, women especially, push those things away. They think, oh, this is just heartburn. This is just, and they push through. They push through because they're busy. They push through because they're taking care of their home, their kids, their life, their home, their job, and they put it off. They think, I'll feel better tomorrow. So quite often it's that person that, put off those signs and symptoms until it was too late. So 8 hours before, almost always there's signs and symptoms. 3 hours is actually what the American Heart Association collects in their Get with the Guidelines resuscitation scenario for when we collect big data for AHA, Get with the Guidelines. It's the 3 hours before that they're looking for. So 3 hours before, people are not feeling well. They are feeling off. They are feeling achy. If they break into a sweat, guaranteed something's about to happen. So I think one of the big pushes for this conversation is really going upstream prior to a cardiac arrest or any emergency. The body shows signs and symptoms. And one of the things that I'm working on right now as the rescue RN is teaching people how to watch for those signs and symptoms. What are we looking for in very simple terms so that anybody can understand? And then more importantly, what should they do about it?
So, I wanted to ask you that. So, if in the United States, just give up people, we have an audience from all over the world. So, if the United States, somebody call 911, what happens after that? What happens in the ambulance for the cardiac arrest people? They give a resuscitation there, or they give a resuscitation at the place, and then CPR. They perform CPR, and then take to the emergency room. During the transport, what happens?
Well, it depends on the stage of cardiac arrest you may or may not be in. I mean, when we call for 911, hopefully it's because we have time to put some things in place that will help the person from going into complete cardiac arrest. Hopefully the call came early enough for us to get there and do some intervention. So if the person is still responsive when emergency crews arrive, and I believe you said 12 minutes is the cutoff, if the person's already in cardiac arrest, we're kind of in trouble by minute 12 because the time frame for starting compressions on a person that doesn't have a pulse and is not breathing is in the outside world, outside of a hospital, is within 3 minutes. Or, well, it's immediately for compressions. I'm sorry, it's 3 minutes for using electricity. But not everybody has electricity handy. So that's in fact the number for an AED, an automatic external defibrillator. Right now, the world has a big push for where they're placed and where they are around the world. But the bottom line is, if you're not in the hospital, it should be within 3 minutes of wherever you are.
So once you go to what do you do once you take to the hospital? What do they do?
Okay, so there's a pile of things that you're going to do. They're going to first do a bunch of diagnostics. If you're not out of it and we're not already doing compressions and put the pads on and doing electricity and doing our advanced cardiac drugs, but it turns out it's a heart attack, which is not the same thing as a cardiac arrest, right? In a heart attack, there's a block in the road causing perfusion to not be as good as we want it to be. And it's causing those symptoms of discomfort or pain in my arm or pain in my neck or causing me to sweat. You might go into cardiac arrest from a heart attack. But if you get to the hospital and you're having a heart attack, there's going to be a lot of people doing a lot of things around you very quickly. You're going to have IVs. We have drugs that we have to get in you right away. We have to get your vitals. And then there's a whole team of people that are going to be alerted to quickly, very quickly analyze what's going on with you and what can we do to fix it.
So cardiac arrest is due to the pumping, not pumping the enough blood, the blood from the heart, and the cardiac coronary heart disease, the blockage is from the heart attack comes from the blockage.
Heart attack is a block in the road. So one of the pipes feeding the heart,
Yes,
I
correct.
mean, there's pipes that feed the heart. The
Right.
heart, like my ring, would be
Yeah,
like a block, and
yeah,
everything south of my ring is not getting fed, goody in and garbage out. So this part
mm,
starts to die, and that hurts.
yeah,
It hurts, and that's when they say I've got a weight on my chest. There's an elephant on my chest. It's because blood's not getting past the blockage. So that's a heart attack. That's not a cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest, A means without. It's goner. So
yeah,
it's an electrical problem. It's not happy with the block in the road, and for whatever other reason, the heart is upset, and it normally love dub works on an electrical signal that's nice and
yeah.
fluid, but something's happening to mess that up for whatever reason, and it causes what's called fibrillation, and the heart's going wooga 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 wooga,
Rapid.
and it cannot pump blood, it cannot get goody in and garbage out, and plus this action takes up a ton of energy, and the heart can't do it for very long. It's not going to do it for very long. So you have very little bit of time to stop this craziness with some electricity. Lub dub, lub dub. That's the goal. So we need to get that electricity right away. So the fibrillation, that this electrical problem, we can smack some sense into it and get the lub dub again. And again, this takes up a lot of energy, and so there's very limited amount of time.
That is still temporary fix, right? That giving a cardiac resuscitation is a temporary fix. Then, but you have to do the eventually what is the problem is exactly. You got to find out what part of the heart is not functioning well, and that the wall motions and all
there's
these things.
there was a cause. There's definitely something that caused
steak
this
and
problem.
steak and the
If
drinks,
we're going to
right?
go back to Russia, China, and all these other places, we there's a many reasons that, and it's not just, you said, like in the Chinese, like they're not overweight in general. But I can tell you, there's a lot of other qualities that are going to decline, that cause not an up factor on your how healthy am I. There's ups and there's downs.
Yeah.
Smoking, the pollution, the type of food that we eat, whether we're heavy or not, is not necessarily the factor. I mean, our vessels do not like. I mean, diabetics who aren't heavy, their vessels get very friable. The heart hates that. I mean, the heart doesn't like electrolyte disturbances. The heart doesn't like a lot of things. The heart doesn't like when the lungs are doing things. There's only so much room in your chest cavity. There's heart and lungs, and they both have. Oh, did I lose you? Or you're back? They
No.
both have just a certain amount of space, and if one takes up more than the other for any reason, it upsets the other. So it could be a lung issue. It could be an lung issue. And when the lungs get where they're not compliant and they get stiff, or they are too inflated and they're pressing on the heart does not, it gets mad. So it has to be like,
So,
same as the brain. There's only so much space.
yeah. During this resuscitation, sometimes they break the ribs, right? Because some people don't know how to do that, and they really cause a lot of break. They can break the bones. Is that our chest ribs? Is that true? Is that
Absolutely. It
possible?
happens all the time, but the person's dead. So, I mean, it's like we got to do whatever we can do. The frailty of their chest is the least of our worries. I
Yes.
mean, the bones in the sternum will heal. It'll be painful, but they'll be alive.
Yeah.
So, it's not on purpose, and it's not because the person did it wrong. It's because it's generally an older person that has frailty in their bones are just, not particularly as strong. When we go to it, you're in it to win it. We got to be the pump. We got to pump that heart. The heart's not pumping on its own. So it sounds horrible, but honestly, it's the least of our worries.
So the training ICU nurses go through a particular training they go through, like how to resuscitate and the code blue and the code prep we talk about. These are the codes they follow certain protocols.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we there's a lot of training. Um, there's training in school. there's depending on where you are in your education as a nurse, there's the levels go up. The more you go to school, the more training you'll get on cardiac procedures, on cardiac arrest. But resuscitation itself tends to be a every 2 year. There's a core set of education for basic, advanced, and pediatric life support. There's other trainings as well, but that tends to be every 2 years. So we all have that. And then in the area of resuscitation, if you're in a critical care area, or you're in an area where hearts are the focus, you need more education, you need more training, in rhythms and EKGs and so forth. So cardiac areas are pretty specific, and it does take additional training.
So you need to get a recertify all the time. So this ACLS, advanced cardiac life systems, advanced basic life support systems. You need to get the recertification on all of them on quite frequent basis, right? I mean,
Every
year,
two
every
years.
2 years.
Every 2 years. And in fact, the research from the giants on our planet, American Heart, ILCOR, European Resuscitation Council, they all have agreed since the early, I don't even know, I'm going to misquote this, but 80s or 90s. It's a long time in my own original research, but they've been saying that 2 years is too long because we have decay. There's decay of that knowledge. If it's use it or lose it. So yes, in the ER or ICU setting, it's used quite often, but in the rest of the areas in healthcare, it's not used as often. So 2 years is too long, but that is the standard.
This is the biggest challenge. We're talking about other countries. It's a biggest challenge because they don't have these certain protocols like this. That can you hear me?
I can't. I'm sorry. Yes, they
Yeah,
died. Put my other speakers on.
yeah. In other countries, they don't have these certain strict guidelines to follow through this continuing medical education, or recertifications are not there. If there is not a strict protocols there, I think there is a lot of problems and can cause, particularly during the cardiac arrest. Do you agree that the global workforce, healthcare workforce, need to be trained and be ready for this onslaught of cardiac diseases? Do you agree with that?
I agree so wholeheartedly. You've really touched on something that is very close to my heart right now. I mean, the brand that I'm pushing right now is Rescue RN, and the entire premise of the Rescue RN is to help create a community, so a rapid response community for our family, for our friends, outside of healthcare. I feel like the way the world is right now, our global community, we all need to know when to call for help, and what to do until help gets there. And I think it's no different. I have, the focus of my training has been on in-hospital providers, in-hospital nurses, uh, interdisciplinary, absolutely. That there isn't anybody who everybody in the hospital has to have basic life support. But the more I'm in this field, the more I'm working, the more I realize that this is a global issue, inside the hospital, outside of the issue. I mean, outside the hospital, in every country in the world. So families, regardless of where you live on this planet, need to know when to call, because we want them, remember, 24, 48 hours before. I'm on a mission to teach them how to triage. We call it triage in medicine. And triage is something that's, green, yellow, red, sick or not sick. And if the patient is a yellow, if it's a red, if the patient's a red, it's a 911. It's a call for emergency. But we want people to call before the red. We want them to call in the yellow zone when your gut instinct says there's something the matter with my family member. And we don't want you to have to go to the hospital. I don't want you to have to call an ambulance. So my mission is to train everybody how to be their own rapid response team, or how to connect to their own rapid response team, if possible, to keep them out of the hospital.
My father is a doctor and a teacher and a doctor in a small village in India. He passed away. He was, he is a brilliant doctor, but he doesn't have any training available for him to learn about the cardiac resuscitation, anything like that, CPR. So we have to depend on biggest hospitals is like 10 miles away, and then most of the people die. There is no other chance of, if they have a heart attack, it's probably death is the only answer. So that kind of village I was in. So this non-existent, you could save through simple education. You can save a lot of things. Now that is, my father would have been really, Brad would have been really enjoyed this conversation, in fact. But let us talk about, when you're talking about the heart and the electricity. I'm going to present a topic. After that, we'll come back and talk about rescue RN a little bit more. Let me present that one. To the both of us can watch together on this one, and how the electricity works in the heart. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But anyway, this is the physician and electricity and Frankenstein, all of them together. And definitely, she is not a Frankenstein, but she's a Mary Shelley kind of type, Susan Davis. So let me. So this is a tale of how that works, and I'm going to lead. So this is started in the story starts in Italy. His name is a doctor, Giovanni Aldini. Is a doctor and is a physicist. He's a physician and a physicist. He was born in 1762 in Bologna, Italy. Bologna is a very educational center for the Italian educational center. He was a very good speaker of Italian, French. Of course, he was born in Italy. French and English and the Latin. He was fluent in all those languages. He's a multilingual. So that's a big advantage for him. So he's a doctor and a physicist, like I'm a physicist, but I'm not a physician. He's a both. So, but actually, the story starts before that. His uncle, his name is Luigi Galvani, is his uncle. He was born in 1737. He was doing some strange experiment with the frogs, dead frogs. What he does was he's putting an electric wire between the copper wire between the head of the dead frog and the legs, and they started twitching. Then he told the story, a strange story, that there is a life inside. It's a Catholic country. There was a life inside, and you can resurrect the life. It's a life from, he believed there is a life inside that we could somehow, so biological chemical reactions, invoke the chemical reaction, and you can create a biological response, which is that twitching. The frog is twitching when you connect those head and the tail, the legs. If you connect them together, it's twitching through copper wire. So he says that there is a life inside. That is, it was his an idea. So that was a Luigi Galvani is a very famous guy during the time. Galvanometer was, I used to work on the galvanometers. This is a measure of the electricity, actually the current measure through galvanometer voltage. That is named after him. So he was his uncle, Luigi Galvani's uncle, Aldini's uncle. All the Italian names sound same, but the Aldini is the real guy. The Aldini was a doctor, is a physicist and a physician. What he did was he was working with his uncle, and he did a work with like Susan used to be in the veterinary side. He was doing with a lot of experiment with the animals. So he wrote a book called Electricitati and Animali in Electricitati. Giovanni Aldini wrote a book called Animali Electricitati. It's a book of electricity on the animals. It is a big book. It's a huge study for all the medical people. But he was not sad. He was not happy. He wants to resurrect life in the dead bodies. That's what he wants to do. But that's illegal in Italy because it's a Roman Catholic country. The Christianity is a very strong hold there. The Vatican is not that far, so it is kind of you cannot do on the dead bodies. You cannot take it out the dead bodies from in the graves, and you cannot do it. That's illegal in Italy. So he was frustrated, and then so he moved to, because he speaks English. Giovanni Aldini moved to England, London. So in London, there is an exception. If there is somebody executed by hanging by death, you can have that body for the medical experiments. That is an exception in the London. So he was a very well known physician already, because of his uncle and himself. Both are good, and he wrote a very famous book, Animali Electricitati. So that's the animal electricity in animals, is a big book during the time. So he's very well known. So the London, they gave him permission to give the dead bodies if there is execution. What happened was, there is a guy, George Foster, his name. He killed his in Paddington Canal. He drowned his wife and a child in the drunken state in 4th December 1802. So he was sentenced to death. So he was sentenced to death. So the death by hanging. So this body that Giovanni Alini got his dead body, and he put a lot of pressure on the political side, got his body. That's that is the story. One of his assistants is from England. He was connected with the royals and all those people. He went there and he convinced all of them to make it faster, because before it gets to trace what is the decaying of the body, it is he can do that. So he brought the electricity. He bought the dead body there. So what he did was Alejandro Volta is another Italian guy invented the battery. Alejandro Volta. That's why we call voltage. So first battery was invented through voltage. That is, what he did was a lot of metal plates, and between these there is a salt cloths, a salt liquid, liquid salt cloth dipped in the liquid salt, and then put in between the metal plates and piled up together. It becomes a battery. So they connected together. It produces a lot of electricity and connected to the dead body to the top and the bottom. So what happens is, in this dead body just wakes up. It quivered. It created a it do the contorted. It's creating it's just sat up. So that guy who bought the body, English guy, got a heart attack actually and died, because he thought that there's a demon. So actually, English journal published this, English newspaper published that thing with the demon behind him. So they thought something, there is a demon is acting upon, there's a life, the demon is coming out. It's not a natural way of the dying coming out life. They thought really the guy who died is coming to real life, but that electricity was given to him. That way it is contorted, and it was a really horrible scene. So that is the cause of the Mary Shelley, her father, when she was younger. Mary Shelley Frankenstein. Galvanism is a very famous during the time. She heard about galvanism. Galvanism means electricity to the animals, electricity to the humans, is how that works. That's why she wrote the Frankenstein novel, basically inspired by galvanism. That galvanism is the electricity conducting. Galvanism is the field of science that do the electricity on the dead bodies and bringing the life back. That's why she had a runaway hit. That is, a Frankenstein book was during the time. It was a runaway hit. The children's it put the generations of children into the scared world. So that's a Mary Shelley's book. But electricity has played a very important role in the medicine. Nikola Tesla. A Tesla factory I went to several times. It's not that far from than where I used to live. So that is a Tesla factory that I'm at with my friends. So, but anyway, it's actually, he never invented the car. So let me tell you that he just named after him. But what he invented was, he is the first one who recognized the X-rays. He used to call shadowgraphs. He recognized the shadowgraphs, the X-ray inventor, not the William Röntgen. Everybody thinks that, but X-ray was invented, actually was recognized by Nikola Tesla. Is a physicist, came from Denmark, Austria to the United States. So he also invented dithermy in physical therapy. They use it in physical therapy for the heat. The dithermy is produce a heat, and deep tissue heating the deep tissue. So it gives you physical therapy relaxation. He invented that part of it actually. So MRIs, they call the strength of the MRIs named after him is MRI 3 Tesla is the strength of the MRI, the MRI coil that they named after him. But his contributions to the medicine is quite remarkable, Nikola Tesla. But he died with penniless at the end. That's United States treats people, real contributors, they don't treat them good. But all the business guys makes a lot of money. So, but the electricity and magnetism are the same force. It's a manifestation of the same force. They're not two different. They're twins. Electricity, when electricity goes through a wire, the magnetism is produced a perpendicular right thumb rule. If you see the right thumb rule is the electricity, and the right thumb rule is perpendicular. Electricity and magnetism are perpendicular fields. So when the electricity goes through a wire, the way the magnetism is produced. You can do other way around. If you take a coil, you put the magnet back and forth and move it around. The electricity is produced in the coil. So electricity and magnetism are basically the one and the same force. Is called electromagnetic force. They're all one and the same. So, but we have as you know, in the electricity and magnetism, we have a lot of, we're talking about the electricity, give a jump start, you give an electric signal to the heart. So the ECG measures, actually, electrocardiogram measures the heart signals, the waves, it measures the heartbeats, ST, PQRS complex and all those things. But the most important is it measures the electrical signal output from the heart. That's what it does. So that is, we are very good. We have been doing this to almost 150 years about that electrocardiograms, 100 years at least. So that was very well established thing. That is a standard, gold standard even now, the ECG. EEG is electroencephalograph, which is you can measure it to find out the brain is basically a 10-watt electric bulb. You can measure the electricity, 10 watts electric bulb. So the electricity can be easily measured through they put a cap on it, and then electroencephalograph measures the electricity in the brain to measure the seizures, to measure the seizures, dementia, Alzheimer's. You can diagnose a lot of things. This is also 100 years old. These two things. So measuring the electrical output from the body, these are all we already familiar with that. What we are not familiar with it is the next. So magnetic field. So when there is the electric field, there is a magnetic field, right? So brain is also producing a magnetic field, and also our body, heart is producing the magnetic field, because both of them electrical circuits. You can see concentrated electrical currents there. But we don't. That is a very small magnetic field. Is a very, very tough to measure, because it was so weak in strength. Because the Earth's magnetic field is so strong, it overlaps the magnetic field of these brain and heart. But if you measure it, you can get wonders of the things. I'm going to show you. There is a machine called magnetoencephalograph. Was born. I'm going to play I'm going to play a video that I did. You can see that on the magnetoencephalograph machine.
You might have heard about a psychic squid that predicts a World Cup winner, or at least you have seen at the dinner table. The squid I am talking about is neither. This squid accidentally fell on us 100 years ahead of its time. The squid contribution to the medical field is invaluable. It revolutionizes the way you predict and diagnose diseases. This squid hunts cancer cells like you've never seen before. It will pick up source of seizures in the brain like no other. It is just not picking the needle from a haystack. It can pick your lost nail from the Appalachian Mountains. Hello, my name is Ramana Anamaraju. I have a passion for physics, specialized in allied healthcare, and above all, concerned for well-being of all humanity. Edward Flynn was hit by tragedy twice and lost both of his wives to breast cancer. When his first wife fell in coma, he used to visit her at the hospital. He used to whisper in her ears, wondering she may be understanding what he was saying. After a few months, she died. Not knowing his wife understood his undying love for her or not is frustrating. Then second wife, after a brief marriage, lost to breast cancer again. He is determined to do something about it. Edward Flynn is neither king nor can afford to build a Taj Mahal in memory of his beloved wives. But he built something better. He built SQUID. Acronym for SQUID is Superconducting Quantum Interference Device. As strange as that name is, this device is out of this world. He brought a mystical and elusive quantum nature of our universe to the benefit of the world of humanity. Edward Flynn is a nuclear physicist at the prestigious Los Alamos Defense Laboratories. He gave a remarkable gift from mother of all sciences, physics, to the field of medicine. A new machine, magnetoencephalograph, was born, usually referred as a MEG scanner. This exotic hair blower looking machine is a mag helmet made up of several squids, which are quantum devices that are designed by Edward Flynn's team. This machine, without touching the body, can read magnetic fields coming from a body that are 100 million times weaker than our Earth's magnetic field. Amanda Malmsberg of Wisconsin fell on the kitchen at the age of 8 with a first epileptic seizure. She was getting seizures almost 100 times a day by the age 16. With the help of neuroradiologist Dr. Deepak Raghavan, they made a journey deep into her brain by using MEG scanner.
MEG, or magnetoencephalography, is a relatively new tool that's become available to us, which is capable of looking at the magnetic fields generated by the brain and localizing them back on the anatomy of the brain. At this time, Fredericton Medical College of Wisconsin is the only center in Wisconsin which has a clinical MEG program. We do see patients from not only our hospital but other centers as well. Most people are familiar with electroencephalography, or what we call EEG, where you record brain activity or brain waves from electrodes that are planted on the scalp. Now, there is a substantial amount of tissue and fluid that separates the generators of that electrical activity in the brain and the locations at which we are recording this electrical activity, including tissue such as the skull and scalp. So that can substantially alter the view of what we are looking at in the brain, pretty much in the same way that if you're trying to listen to a conversation through a thick wall, you hear muffled sounds. You may vaguely be able to place people in different parts of the room, but not quite clearly see who spoke from where. So alternative techniques which are not affected by the tissue is of great interest.
Without single incision looking for the elusive source of epilepsy, it is just like looking for a needle in the Grand Canyon. It is that difficult. They found the source of her problem hiding deep inside of her brain. No other modality, including powerful MRI, even come close to these findings. The very tiny source of area that is causing her seizures was surgically removed, and Amanda is living happily ever after without even a single incident of seizure. The woman's life was given back by this remarkable machine. The researchers racing towards to find that very tiny number of cells that causing Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, depression, autism, and chronic alcoholism, and many other brain-related diseases. MEG scanner is taking on the most challenging and the deadliest disease of all for women, breast cancer. With the present technologies, you need 10 million cells to be affected before it shows up on any modality or device like a mammography or MRI. But the MEG scanner hunts for those few thousand cells causing cancer out of 90 trillion cells, not a billion, 90 trillion cells. Probably MEG scanner can detect breast cancer 5 to 10 years in advance before any modality. Vanderbilt Gastrointestinal Squid Technology GIST Laboratory is an interdisciplinary initiative by the Department of Surgery and by the Department of Physics to detect how to find stomach ailments. Can go on. This is a direct demonstration of quantum physics in action through a medical device while saving countless lives. Nuclear physicist Edward Flynn may not have saved his wife's life, but saved countless lives on her memory and will be saving millions in the future. It is better than a Taj Mahal indeed. Thank you for listening.
Sorry. So the actually this is very expensive. There's actually the studio is very expensive to build it. Only studio that is comparable I've seen it. I went to Minneapolis one time. I was given a chance to visit, invited through some other friends to see the Prince Music Studio when he was alive. It is built in a vacuum. The magnetoencephalograph has to be built in a vacuum. They have to dig the vacuum. It's expensive. That's a very expensive studio he built there. That's the Prince can afford it, but we don't have a magnetoencephalographs in every university. You should have in every city, in fact. So actually, she was Amanda Mamberg is alive. She's a primary care teacher now. Dr. Raghavan is still practicing. He's kind of retiring right now. But Meg is still in the stages of struggling. That you saw that. So you can also I don't know whether you can do the electricity, and I don't know, I didn't show you, but you can do the cardiac also, cardiograms. You can see I think I did is that, yeah, you can, the heart also you can measure through a magnetic heart. For the pediatric hearts, they use the meg scanner. So magnetoencephalograph, magnetocardiography, they call magnetocardiograph. They use it to measure the pediatric hearts. So it's a very useful. These are the reason I was telling you. There is a lot of people contributed to the electricity and magnetism, made enormous contributions. Giovanni Aldini, then he made experiments on dead bodies. His uncle Luigi Galvani was with the electricity. Michael Faraday is the English British physicist who did play with the electricity itself. Nikola Tesla, everybody knows now Tesla. James Maxwell, who gave a mathematical structure for all the electricity and magnetism, and Jagadish Chandra Bose, who invented indirectly to the semiconductors, so that the passing of electricity on and off gates that he invented. And Benjamin Franklin is lightning. He worked on the lightning. All of them contributed to the medicine indirectly and directly. Thank you for listening. And let me bring Susan back to the stage. What do you think of
Woo!
Susan?
Wow. That was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
That was amazing. I mean, I've never even heard of it. I can't believe it. So they were in Wisconsin, you said. How many?
There are a lot of universities now. Some universities are there. The Vanderbilt has it, Stanford, big schools has it. It's expensive to build it, but we spend a lot of money on the stupid wars. We could spend a lot more on these kind of things.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd say fascinating. So that puts a whole new light on being responsible for the energy you bring into a room, right? So like when you walk into a room, if I love the image of the magnetism around that the heart puts out and the brain puts out, but I often say you are definitely responsible for the energy you bring into a room. And I read a study at some point, I don't remember who wrote it, but that it has been measured up to 8 feet from the human body.
Or you can measure the magnetic field for a lot of time.
Yeah,
Because electricity produces the magnetism. Electricity cannot travel outside of it doesn't have strong strength enough, but the magnetism can travel. You can measure, if you have sensitive equipment, you can measure the magnetic aura around you. So
yeah, so I like that. So
yeah.
so your audience should be very mindful.
So that's my job, is to bring out the technical
into
subjects.
everybody else's space.
Yeah, I wanted to bring the subjects like that to the different subjects to give a exposure to these things. See that electricity and magnetism that you were talking about. You need to give that electric jolt to the heart to bring it back in cardiac arrest times. So tell us that how important the electricity is for our body. So that is what you work on, right? That you work on the patients that they go through that kind of they need electricity badly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I often use like a car battery for an example, for people. I mean, when your car battery is nearly dead and you go to start it, it's like, there's still a little bit of juice left in there. It's the time to put the cables on and zap it, and your car will start. But when you go and there's nothing, you've got troubles. So,
that is a cardiac arrest.
the
car for the human same.
It's very similar. So what's the kind of time you have? The longer you wait, the less chance you have. The heart goes through like basically 3 phases of dying. It's going to work really hard, really fast to try. And the body is miraculous. The body is miraculous. The heart cells are the neatest ones, in my opinion, in the whole body. I don't know, the brain's pretty cool. But the heart will try to save you. It has many backup mechanisms, and it's going to try to save you. But we have to give it some help. So yes, the whole point is the electricity, the electrical system of the heart. The buttons, that the go button is misfiring. The heart's misfiring. We're not love dubbing. We're wooga wooga wooging, and we need that electricity, and we need it quick before it turns into that dead battery, basically, and there's nothing left.
Yeah, then the rest of the organs will fail one by one. So let me ask you: what you take a biggest challenge of all, rescue RN, yeah, and what is rescue RN? Is it you were trying to educate the work the not only the patients around the world is we just mentioned Russia, China, India, Brazil, United States. There's a lot of problems in the cardiac problems, particularly there's a populous country, India and China, and all those countries surrounded by them. There is not hardly any infrastructure available for to save everybody. So you come out, you came up with a solution for those people. You say that they can give enough education to save the life in the last moment of a last moment. Tell us a little bit about the rescue RN, Susan.
I feel, Ramana, like we have to be accountable for ourselves, for our family members. We have to learn enough to save each other. Whether we're the reason the American Heart Association came up with the plan, it's a type of CPR called Friends and Family, is because you're most likely to tank, fall out, be sick, or unresponsive, and you will be around your friends and family. Okay, that's far, far away from where help is. That's far, far away from the hospital. You earlier brought up the 12 minutes. 12 minutes is, well, on the longest, hopefully, before help can arrive. But we know we have traffic. We know we have many circumstances that might prevent that time frame. 12 minutes is too long for a battery to hold its own. Okay, so we have to, and my mission behind Rescue RN is I want to bring to the world the very simple and easy steps. I want to teach the world how to triage. So in healthcare, triage means, people come into an emergency room and we hear the story, and or if there's not time for a story, we quickly give the patient a score that says how sick they are and how quickly they need to be seen. So let's just say if it was a 1, 2, and a 3, 3 means it's imminent. If we don't do something right now, they're going to die. A 2, I'm just making these numbers up for the sake of the story. But 2 would be, you know what? If we don't do something soon, it's imminent. They're going to have a problem, near death. And then level 1 would be like, and I probably just messed it up for number's sakes. But anyway, the bottom line is there's low, medium, and high as far as how sick or not sick people are. And my goal as a rescue RN is to teach the world to triage. And I'm not going to get into numbers. That was a bad example. I use a color-coded scale. Green, my human is good. Yellow, I'm not so sure. Red, we have a problem. And there's easy parameters to help teach the world that. And I want them to know how to triage their family members and then what to do about it if they're unsure. So basically, when we get to the yellow, now what are we going to do? We're going to call for help, whether it's our family members, whether it's our friends, whether it's our doctor, our neighbors. Somebody's going to come check on you. Someone's going to help you make this decision, including hopefully me if I'm in that position. Or if the person is a red based on this simple triage system, they're going to know it's time to call 911 or call for an emergency. And if there's a way for us to get help to them even quicker, then that's what I'm working on.
Susan, that is a badly needed service and really education that our entire world needs it. Thank you. It is truly an honor to talk with you. It's a privilege. It is a very educational on top of it. The most important is that your service to the world is actually the boom and the boon and a blessing to everybody who needs it. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for teaching me so much. I just so appreciate it.
Thank you.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it